Hello and welcome to the Magic in You podcast. This is the place where we reconnect with the wonder of our childlike spirit and rediscover the timeless joy and wisdom found in children's books. Together, we'll transform these stories into powerful secrets for mastering life's challenges, finding the freedom to be your true self, and embracing the joy of your creative nature. I'm Gina Graves, board-certified coach, musician, and teacher. Thank you so much for being here. Have you ever felt stuck, unsure of what's next, or scared to make a change? Or like things just didn't work out the way you'd hoped? Or maybe you're even in a slump. Stay tuned and let's see what we can discover. Today we're going on an adventure with one of my very favorite books. This is one I have gifted to many friends, yes, adult friends, because when I read it to my daughter, I just couldn't believe the profound wisdom laid out in this delightful gem of a book. It's by none other than the great Dr. Seuss, and it's called The Places You'll Go. Dr. Seuss states on the back cover of this book that it's 98 3/4% guaranteed to inspire, and the rest is up to you. If you're alive and you're going places, which if you're alive and well, you are, whether you actively choose to or not, this book is for you. It begins with, "Congratulations, today is your day. You're off to great places, you're off and away. You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself any direction you choose." So, where are you? And where would you like to go? What are you going to do, and what are you doing with this precious life of yours? Because there are so many choices, right? Sometimes we just can't decide. Or we do decide, and then we talk ourselves out of that decision. Or things are just too difficult and there are too many obstacles. We feel like if something was meant to be, then shouldn't it be easier? The book says, you'll look up and down streets, look them over with care. About some you'll say, I don't choose to go there. Because, he says, with brains in your head and shoes on your feet, you're too smart to go down any not-so-good street. So let me ask you, with those fabulous brains you have in your head, have you ever gone down a not-so-good street? I sure have. Makes me think of the famous poem Autobiography in 5 Chapters by Portia Nelson. I'll sum it up for you in case you haven't heard it, and even if you have, it still serves as a great reminder. Chapter 1. You unknowingly fall into a hole on the street. It feels hopeless, and you don't see a way out. It's not your fault, but it takes a really long time to escape. Chapter 2. You walk down the same street and fall into the same hole again. This time, you realize the pattern, but you still feel stuck and you blame external circumstances. It still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3. You see the hole and you know it's there, but you fall in anyway. It's become a habit at this point. This time, you take responsibility and you get out more quickly. Chapter 4, you walk down the same street, but this time you walk around the hole. Chapter 5, you choose a different street altogether. So let me ask, what street are you walking down right now? And have you ever felt stuck in a hole? What should you do? The saying goes, the hell you know is better than the hell you don't know. Some people will stay in their hole because it's a habit, because it's what they know. They're somehow handling the level of pain or discomfort of that hole, and they just accept it. They worry that if they leave their hole, things might be worse. But at the risk of sounding like Dr. Seuss, how would you know? You can't know unless you give it a go. Plus, how else will you grow? You've got to get out of the hole And you've got to walk down a different street and face the unknown. It might not be easy, but the good news is you were built for great challenges. So whatever comes your way, believe it or not, you can handle it. So let's say, like Dr. Seuss says, you may not find any you want to go down. In that case, of course, you'll head straight out of town. It's opener there in the wide open air. You'll start happening there. Well, what does that mean exactly? What would open air feel like? What would that be for you? Would it be a whole new world? An actual brand new place? Or maybe it's just away from a situation, or away from a person, or a job, or away from your debilitating thoughts. Maybe it's just space you need to find yourself. What do you dream of? Do you allow yourself wide open space to dream? Science shows that the right hemisphere of the brain needs approximately 15 minutes of nothingness to access your why, or a deeper meaning to what you might choose to do. I feel like it's like creating a wide open space for what I believe is divine intervention. We humans hate to be bored, but it's only in that silence that we can discover the part of ourselves that reveals the answers we seek. And I'm not saying like one and done. In 15 minutes, you'll finally know the meaning of life, and then you can just move on from there. No. But if you continuously create space to allow that small but powerful guiding voice to come through and be heard, you can gain access to receiving a knowing that is pure, true, and sometimes downright inspiring. You don't necessarily just have to sit in silence. You can also walk in nature, but make sure you do it without headphones. You don't want to disrupt. You don't want to disrupt that voice. So you can tell the difference between the guiding voice of the divine and the voice of the ego, because the ego is the louder, more intrusive voice. It's the quiet voice that you want to pay attention to. So, the book colorfully paints the picture of what happens when you aim high and you soar to great heights. You're flying ahead of everyone and you're the best. He says, you'll top all the rest. And then you turn the page and he breaks it to us. Except when you don't, because sometimes you won't. Have you ever been there, on top of the world one day, at the bottom of the pit the next? I sure have. Let's talk about my friend Kevin for a moment. Kevin is an engineer. Working for a large corporation, he was splendid at his job. He's a brilliant and truly wonderful man with a kind heart and generous spirit. He designed many important devices that made life a whole lot easier and more efficient for people in his industry. He was on top of the world. He was able to make a great living for himself and his wife, doing what he loved and enjoyed, which was essentially problem-solving and solutions. And he was loved and respected by colleagues and friends alike. Life was grand in Kevinland. One day, out of the blue, the corporate monsters sent their minions to invade Kevin's workspace, announced to him that his job was ending, and then all in that very same moment forced him to pack his belongings. Right in front of his colleagues, he was shamefully escorted out of the building like a criminal. Everything he had worked for, every good thing he had thought about himself, collapsed in that very moment. Dr. Seuss says, your gang will fly on and you'll be left in a lurch. He predicts that ever so accurately. Has anything like that ever happened to you, where your perception was that things were going quite well and you felt valued, and then poof, just like that, the rug was mercilessly pulled out from under you? From Dr. Seuss. I'm sorry to say so, but sadly it's true that bang-ups and hang-ups can happen to you. You'll come down from the lurch with an unpleasant bump, And the chances are then that you'll be in a slump. Whew. You know, I don't remember reading this book as a child. I'm not sure I would have truly understood, but I definitely wish that I had this book when I was in my, 20s and 30s to refer to, because he nailed it. This is how life goes. It's the human condition. I certainly know firsthand, and many hands from the line of work I'm in, that as Dr. Seuss says, unslumping yourself is not easily done. He says the streets are not marked and it's mostly dark. You don't know where to go. You can't make a decision because you can't really see. Because while we're in it, we can't see that we're in process. But if we can know what to expect, could that somehow make it easier? Like if the seed somehow knows it's going to burst through the ground, will it keep on trying to get up there, right? Not that we can ever know the exact circumstances coming our way. If anything is certain, life will throw all kinds of curveballs at us. So a note on expectations. When my students are having trouble with a piano piece, for instance, oftentimes the issue is that they're expecting it to be easier than it is. They're expecting to be able to master a passage far more quickly than the actual practice it takes to do so. I tell my students, you have to expect it to be hard. Then, if it's easy, beautiful. Enjoy that while it lasts. It's a gift. Or in a classical piece, when it's been impossible for a student, they finally start to get it, but then they dread the next pages because they're only halfway there. Then they discover, and I do love telling them, that the last 2 pages are almost identical to the first 2, and that their work is nearly complete. So life is like that. We expect things to be easy. We expect things to go our way. And maybe there's some wisdom in that, to be feeling good about your expectation of things going just as you wish them to go, right? Law of attraction is all about that. But what happens when they don't go your way? How much of a meltdown might you have? Could it actually be easier if you counted your failures as part of the process? If you embraced them? If, like the law of attraction suggests, you remain in good spirits, practicing gratitude and keeping your vibration high even when things aren't going as planned. And then, just like classical music, when you turn the page and you have the same thing happen, you've already experienced it, so you can move through it with more ease. What if mistakes are actually your greatest asset? What if they become the roadmap for your future? You can see all those holes up ahead on your path, and you know just how to walk around them. Again, using music as an example, when students are preparing for a performance, they often get very upset when they're still making mistakes as the performance date is approaching. I tell them those mistakes are like broken bones. You're going to strengthen your knowledge and understanding so that when the nerves hit you in the performance, and it's guaranteed that they will, you'll know exactly where you are and how to navigate. If you play perfectly every time in rehearsal, when the mistakes happen in performance, you won't know what the heck to do. So yes, mistakes will strengthen you. And as a person who's made some seriously dreadful mistakes, I can tell you I would not be the person I am today if I had not made the mistakes and then spent many moons trapped in my version of hell to redeem myself. It's like the higher version of yourself falls into the hole, and down that hole are all kinds of secrets you get access to. But you have to be the one to seek them out. I had a student today, he got kicked out of class for some stupid reason, and his classmates didn't want him to come back to class. And so I asked him, I said, why do you think your classmates don't want you to return? Like, why don't you do some self-reflection here for a minute? And he's like, I don't need self-reflection. And it's like, wow, I just fear for that kid's future, because if he's not willing to self-reflect on something as silly as being thrown out of class for something stupid, what's going to happen when something real happens to him and he can't look at himself and he can't recognize what he did to cause the reality he's found himself in? It reminds me of the therapist's magical question. What could you have done differently? I mean, I know that it doesn't seem like your fault and it feels unfair, but even so, what could you have done differently? And for the person who says nothing, sadly, it's going to be a long road for that person. So anyway, you have to seek out those treasures. The important thing is that you dig for those treasures when you're in the hole. If you just blindly dig your way out and do no kind of self-reflection, you're going to be missing out on what could be your greatest gift. Another thing to remember is if you're not failing, you're not growing. All growth requires risk. Sometimes we muster the courage and we decide to really go for it. We finally make that decision. We finally turn the corner. And instead of all of our wildest dreams immediately coming true, we find ourselves waiting. Dr. Seuss talks about the waiting game. Sometimes we wait and wait and wait and wait. It reminds me, many years ago, I once attended a Narcotics Anonymous meeting with a friend who was struggling with addiction. One person got up to speak, and what he said has stayed with me ever since. I'm just going to paraphrase because I don't remember exactly what he said, but I just remember what he meant. He said, "You think that once you make the decision to stop using, and you really mean it this time, you expect that your friends and family will be so glad, so relieved, and they're going to welcome you with open arms. It's going to be a beautiful, long-awaited, love-filled reunion. But not so fast, soldier. While you were busy running from your pain, these people were forced into an anguish you can't begin to understand. And my friends, if they decide to accept you at all, it's going to take time to regain their trust. A lot of time." So, though your situation may be different, you might not be using drugs, but you might be repeating some kind of pattern, and you might realize that it's time to stop repeating that pattern, right? So, what if we could see it coming? What if we could see that we were going to be sitting in the waiting game for a while? Because other than what we experience with our smartphones, the idea of instant gratification is really just an illusion, right? We need to have more patience. But yes, we certainly do live in a culture where instant gratification is the expectation. We tell ourselves, if it doesn't happen now, it's not going to happen. How many opportunities vanish into the others because we don't give them enough time to manifest, enough time to develop and grow, or we don't have the patience to allow something to come into fruition, or we need to become a better version of ourselves before we can have what it is we're after. And that surely takes time. What are we supposed to do while we wait? Patience is something that I definitely have to be mindful of, to work at. To get back to my point, unslumping ourselves takes time, a lot of self-reflection, and serious effort and intention on our parts. Dr. Seuss warns us, "No, that's not for you. Somehow you'll escape all that waiting and staying." Yes, we're going to absolutely try to rush the process. We distract ourselves. We push the river, so to speak. At the end of the podcast, I have some tips for how to unslump yourself, so stay tuned. Dr. Seuss says, "Fame! You'll be famous as famous can be, with the whole wide world watching you win on TV." We turn the page, and he confesses, quote, "Except when they don't, because sometimes they won't." Then, here's where he delivers one of the most profoundly accurate lines in the book. He says, "Games you can't win, 'cause you'll play against you." Ooh. Here he talks about our demons, where you'll be all alone and you'll meet things that scare you right out of your pants. They'll scare you so much you won't want to go on, but on you will go. So let's talk about the hero's journey for a minute. The journey where you have to battle dragons and demons and enemies. I have to say, in my personal hero's journey, those dragons and demons and enemies were mostly from within. But as we all know, what's at the end of that journey is treasure. You're stronger than you think, and I'm going to remind you of that millions of times. If you battle your demons, if you stop letting them run the show, if you recognize that they're there, but you don't listen to the terrible things that they're trying to say about your worth, and if you have the courage to move forward and really go after what you desire in life, no matter how many holes you fall into or ditches you dig, your chances of getting there are going to improve exponentially. But we want certainty. We want to feel safe. What if there's actually greater risk in not having courage, in not taking risks? The great Tony Robbins always reminds us, if we're not growing, we're dying. And the book, A Course in Miracles, reminds us that we're not supposed to give up control. Rather, we're supposed to give up the illusion that we have control. So while we're busy believing we're in full control of our lives and we're safe and sound as long as we don't move, well, I've got some news for you. Things are going to happen anyway. Things that are definitely beyond your control, like what happened to Kevin. Things that might send you in a downward spiral. But the good news is, just like in a swimming pool, when you hit the very bottom, it's far easier to propel yourself back up to the top. We all have our mountain to climb, and the view from the top will be spectacular. But you must be on your way. If you want to see that view, you've got to get there before your time is up, one glorious step at a time. Sometimes you're in flow and you walk for miles effortlessly. Sometimes it's steep and muddy and it feels like it'll never be easy again. But like my former therapist and mentor John used to say, and I'll always remind you, in light of your upcoming death, you'd better get moving. Oh, and as a side note, here's the real kicker. Once you reach the top of your mountain and you see your spectacular view, there will be a brand new mountain waiting for you to climb. You see, because we human beings are designed to make progress. When we're making progress, we feel better. So as you approach the top of your mountain, it's time to start aiming for the next peak. So back to my friend Kevin. You might be wondering how that turned out. Well, it's interesting. Yes, he had to battle demons. He had to rely on friends and family to talk about his experience. Into the slump he went. He had to hit bottom. And there, in that space, is where the growth happens. It's where you face such darkness that you become strong enough to handle almost anything that comes your way. He went on his hero's journey. And in the end, well, it's not the actual end, but the redemption in this part of the story is quite remarkable. There was something that he had previously designed that was very important to the company for whom he designed it. Something wasn't working properly, and they couldn't figure it out. Everyone who worked there and their brother said, "We've got to call Kevin. He's the only guy who can figure this out." And so Kevin was brought back in as a consultant, making 4 times as much money as before. Redemption at its finest. Sometimes the curveballs we're thrown are undeserved, and they don't make sense. But if we keep climbing our mountain, we can look back and see the tremendous value the hardships provided for us. Personally, looking back at every terrible, painful thing that ever happened to me, I wouldn't change any of it because it made me who I am. I believe Kevin can say the same, and I hope you can too. Dr. Seuss says, And will you succeed? Yes, you will indeed. 98 3/4% guaranteed. And finally, he closes with, today is your day. Your mountain is waiting, so get on your way. There is no time like the present, my friends. You can find the following reflection questions at yourbeautifulpath.com. Number 1, write down one risk you're willing to take this week to step out of your comfort zone. It could be small, but it's a start. Number 2, what do you dream of? Give yourself some wide open space and start dreaming. Number 3, what's your mountain? Take one step today, big or small, and start climbing. As promised, here are some steps for unslumping yourself. Number 1, micro wins. This works because when we feel successful, we feel motivated. So the idea is you pick one small task you've been procrastinating, like organize a drawer, send an email, write one sentence. If what you come up with feels overwhelming, make it even smaller. Match a couple pairs of socks or get your journal and pen out so it's ready for you to write. This is what I teach my piano students when they can't perfect a phrase. We break it down into the smallest possible parts and go from there, even if it's just from getting from one note to the next. Number 2, the 5-minute rule. Set a timer and get to a task. You can do anything for 5 minutes. Often starting is the hardest part. Number 3, reframe the slump. Words have power. So instead of saying, I'm stuck or I'm in a slump, say something like, I'm in transition. Number 4, practice gratitude. This one can be tough, especially when you're down. But thinking of things that you can be grateful for can raise your vibration. It can be as simple as, I'm grateful for the sun rising every morning, or for every breath I get to take, or for my health, or for my loved ones, or for this glass of water I'm drinking that I didn't have to walk a mile to get to. Number 5, the brain dump. I find writing down thoughts to be extremely powerful and therapeutic. We're like sponges, and we have to wring ourselves out when we feel saturated. So getting our thoughts and feelings out of our body can do the trick. So be sure to write for the fire pit so that you're not afraid to say absolutely everything that you need to say. This can also be done in poetry and music and any kind of art form. Now, if all else fails, might I suggest that you find your friendly local cryotherapy center. If you don't know what that is, cryotherapy, look it up. It's super fun. You pretty much stand in a freezing cold chamber for a few minutes. Or dare I say you could do a cold plunge. I personally prefer cryotherapy. It works like magic to release endorphins and give you an energy boost like nothing else. And it'll snap you out of your slump in just a few minutes, guaranteed. Wow, that kind of sounds like an ad, doesn't it? Well, I'm not affiliated with anyone who is doing this. I just have found tremendous benefit from it. Make sure you check with your healthcare professional before doing anything like this. I am not giving medical advice, just telling you what works for me. In the very least, you can fill a bowl with ice water and dunk your face or even your head in it, or a very cold shower. So those last 2 suggestions are completely free. Maybe this sounds a little crazy, I know, but don't knock it till you try it. Okay, thank you so much for listening. Please remember to visit yourbeautifulpath.com for resources, courses, meditations, and if you'd like to find out about coaching, I would love, love, love to hear from you. Also, that's where you'll find the reflection sheets that accompany each episode. I'm Gina Graves, wishing you an adventurous day.